Well, we call this a quarterly meeting because every quarter we have the privilege to have a conversation with Chris Skinner, a round table. And this time we are asking a really simple and basic question, might seem, no? Is the world getting better? And, my name is Marisol Menendez. For those who don't know me, I'm the Chief Open Innovation or Open Innovation Head for NFI, Nordic Future Innovation. And our mission in Nordic Future Innovation is to bring the Nordics together to boost global sustainable innovation. We are happy with the results, the work that we are doing in bringing all the organizations, the corporations from different sectors and different lines of action together. I'm more than proud and happy to have Chris Skinner as the chairman of the board and part of the heart and head of this initiative. And that's why for us it's a privilege and a pride to have Chris Skinner opening this conversation. So Chris, I don't know, without further ado, I leave the floor to you so you can also welcome our guest and open the conversation.
Thanks, Marisol, and welcome, everyone. We live in interesting times, as they say, and every day, as you will know if you read my blog or know what I'm discussing, I think we have challenges both in the economic system, the social system, the governmental system, the world system. And, there's a rebalancing and a rethinking around our world that's taking place, particularly in what I call the K-shaped economy. The K being the upside of the K, a digital bounce into the future, the downside of the K being a physical destruction of the past. And I think this is a fundamental point that every day I'm seeing stores and retailers and companies that were companies I grew up with as brand names that were very successful, but they're dependent upon physicality, closing down. And most of the companies that are launched in the last 20 years on the internet, booming. This is the difference of today. So we thought we'd talk about, is the world getting better, as kind of a philosophical question, but equally delve into some of the key points around this with my friend Rita, who I've known for quite some time now, and that when I wrote Digital Human, which if you haven't read it, I urge you to do so, is all about inclusion and the reach of the digital network to bring everyone onto the network cheaply, easily, and serve them cheaply and easily, with a specific case study around Ant Group, which is the subsidiary spin-off from Alibaba that does all the payments in China, $17 trillion last year. And when I originally met Rita in London, she was working with Alipay. And then I ended up joining the advisory board of Mode Group, which is a company launched across Europe specifically for Bitcoin transacting, as well as supporting Alipay and WeChat Pay. And Rita joined Mode, I think last year. So Rita, why don't you say hello and introduce yourself properly?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Hi, everyone. So as Chris mentioned, we've known each other for a few years now. It started with Alipay. I was with Alipay for almost 10 years. It was a wild ride. I did a little bit of a world tour with them, from China to Asia to Europe, and then North America, and then back to London. And, I witnessed lots of amazing things that Alipay was able to achieve. And for me, it was like, after 10 years, I wanted a different challenge, and I wanted to join something small again. So I joined Mode, as Chris mentioned. We're basically building a digital wallet that combines payment, loyalty, and cryptocurrency. It's now focusing on UK markets. And yeah, I'm the CCO of the company, and also I'm on the board. Yeah, so very happy to be here. and looking forward to the discussion.
Now, Rita and Marisol, Iron, and you have no idea what we're going to talk about. So I'm going to kick it off, and I'm going to use Jamie Dimon's shareholder newsletter as my platform, primarily because if you didn't read it, you should. It came out yesterday, or that's when I saw it. 66 pages. It's a long read. It's like a 3-hour read. But interestingly, it's the sort of, I actually blogged about it today on thefinancer.com, saying that it's not the sort of newsletter you would expect to see from a banker, because it's talking about bigger issues. So let me go through the issues that he raises and see what your reaction is, Rita, and equally if anyone else wants to join in. Because we're talking about, is the world getting better? And to begin with, because my industry is banking, as is Jamie Dimon's, who's the chairman, chief executive of JP Chase. He starts by saying that banking is fundamentally challenged more than ever by big tech, as in the Alibabas and the Amazons of this world, and the importance of cloud, artificial intelligence, digital platforms are formidable. And banks are increasingly playing a smaller role in the financial system because they're bogged down in the past. What do you think, Rita?
Yeah, well, I think so. I agree that like his newsletter. I just had a brief glance at your blog this morning. I think he's he's being very straightforward and honest about the challenges banking where banks are facing, right? I think the definitely because of the I think we talked about this in various occasions, Chris, that sometimes like when you have a legacy infrastructure that's very established and mature, that holds you back. It's good that things are working, but it also holds you back from innovating and adopting new technology. So in a way that you compare for example, fintech between US and China. And China had this tremendous growth in fintech in the past 10 years, partly because there was not a legacy system in place, right? Before, like for example, card infrastructure was not that well established in China 10 years ago. That's why mobile wallets, QR code payment could take over so quickly. So I think legacy or established infrastructure is probably something holds things back to some extent.
Yeah, I think for me, and we'll talk a wider perspective shortly, but I'm always going to start with banking because that's my business and industry. But I find it very interesting that Jamie Dimon is the guy who has continually, for the last 5-6 years, blasted Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies as being a scam, a sham, a waste of time, a load of shit. Literally, those are the words that he's using. And yet now, JP Chase is valuing Bitcoin as likely to be $130,000 per coin by the end of the year. Citibank saying $140,000, $150,000. Bloomberg came out with a report yesterday saying $400,000. I think the world is shifting on a tectonic plate of digitalization, and Bitcoin is a good example of that digitalization.
Yeah, I think partly because there were lots of big events last year that sort of de-risked Bitcoin or cryptocurrency in many ways, but at the same time, I think people are waking up to how to say what it stands for, like cryptocurrency or Bitcoin, what it stands for, especially for the younger generation, for millennials and for Gen Z. It's not just something that they can make money on. It is definitely like a sort of in a way like a speculative how to say tool for people to to get rich fast, as some people would put it. But like it also stands for like ideological how to say purpose, right? Like for some people, like how we want to look at our how we want to interact with financial services in the future, how we want to look at, how, governments interact with their people, like Bitcoin sort of embodies lots of those thinking around around ideological value, I think, for the younger generation, and that's what I think is very interesting for me, and I think like the world is also starting to see that, and you cannot stop that wave of younger generation taking over, right?
I think that's the issue around, is the world getting better, which is democratization of the world through the network, and Bitcoin is a good representation of that. But is that making the world better if we decentralize and democratize everything, or does it mean it becomes more of a Wild West and it's completely unregulated and governments have no control?
That's a very, very interesting question. I think, like my view on that is efficiency, efficiency and transparency. So you would ask that question, is our banking system efficient, right? I mean, in fact, even though I think, banking was first created in 2000 BC, it has been thousands of years. There are still in the world probably I think more than 2 billion people that are unbanked, that has no access to financial services at all. So is it efficient? And I think in many ways disintermediation or democratization aims to increase efficiency, right? I think that's what happens on the crypto side, like on the distributed ledger side. But in fiat world, I think there are things interesting happening as well. That's sort of aiming to disintermediate, such as open banking, right? I always use this example of open banking. It is trying to cut out the middleman, right? So give the, like, for example, give the ownership of data back to customers. So I think it is in a way increase efficiency and transparency, and that's what matters.
So what do you think about central bank digital currencies? Because since the rise of Bitcoin, and I'm hodling like many other people, I'm not a millennial, but I've invested, and I've been amazed by the rise of the price in the last year. It's gone up 20 times in value. In terms of cryptocurrencies, particularly Bitcoin and Ethereum. But the result of that is it's really moved governments very quickly to embrace the idea of issuing fiat currencies in a digital form. And Sweden, China, the ECB, Christine Lagarde, many others are really working very quickly to try and move towards digital fiat currencies to, I guess, eradicate cryptocurrencies. Who's going to win?
Yeah, I think actually I know you've been blogging about this topic quite a few times. I would like to hear what you think about it first.
Well, I think it's intriguing because from my perspective, we're on the cusp of a pivot from physical to digital, and it's been turbocharged by the pandemic. So in the last year, people have been forced to work from home, forced to get service at home, forced to be entertained at home. They didn't necessarily want that, but now that they've had that behavioral change forced upon them, we're seeing massive cultural change, which I think cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin specifically, represents. And the governments, for me, are fundamentally challenged, as are any institution that was created before 2000. Because they weren't born on the internet, they weren't created for the internet, they don't operate in a model on the internet. And that includes governments and banks and businesses. And that pivot that's been forced upon us all is fundamentally challenging us all. I keep saying, that most companies are not digital native, they're digital immigrants. And you can see that by the way in which, for example, companies have moved to use cloud in the last year. So they've done cloud contracts so they can be allowing people to work from home and customers to be serviced from home, but they have no structure around a digital business model. And that's exactly what would apply to a central bank digital currency, as much as a bank that's trying to pivot to work from just distributed and decentralized workforces. What I think is going to happen, and you are welcome to agree or disagree, including everyone else, is that I think the world is getting better because of the network and decentralization and democratization. I think it challenges all governments fundamentally because the internet doesn't recognize borders. And that is the, I've said this for quite some time, that is the biggest issue. That if you have a borderless world, how do you govern a borderless world?
Yeah. Marissa?
Yeah, no, I wanted maybe to connect this idea also with that, the thing about the financial services is that they are transversal and they affect the way every other sector behaves at the end. Yeah? And even this thought that you were saying, Chris, right now, we are the internet implications, the borderless aspect of the internet also creates a different behavior around many businesses. And so if you add this to the financial perspective, to all the trends that we are living, to the impact of what's happening with COVID and all this new world that we are living in, it creates at the end a dynamic behavior with some implications that at the end might be or not might be creating a better world, no? But I think I wanted to hear from you, if I might also ask a question. And also, I invite everyone to jump in. You can raise your hand or you can write the question in the chat. But maybe I would like to ask you, what would be your vision or your analysis, both Rita and Chris, on the implications for other sectors about these things that you were talking about in the financial industry and with crypto, and how does it affect at the end and the dynamic behavior of all the other activities?
Well, I'll raise a couple of points that Jamie Dimon from JP Morgan Chase put in his shareholder newsletter. Again, I want to revert to this quite often. I think there's so much content in the 66 pages that are worth reading. And some people say it's his launch of his presidential campaign. Who knows? But a couple of quotes here. Businesses must earn the trust of their customers and communities by acting ethically and morally. The problems that are tearing apart the fabric of American society require all of us to work together with a common purpose: government, business, and society. History teaches us that a successful society ages, and as it ages, the common social purpose that binds them all together becomes less important. And I'm talking a lot at the moment about purpose and purpose-driven banking in particular, but purpose-driven societies, purpose-driven economies. And what I mean by that is that you have to stand for something or you fall down. And in particular, what's interesting for me is Milton Friedman, for the last century, defined economics as being driven by profit. As long as you behave legally and deliver profit, you'll have a successful business. I disagree. I actually think it's much more behave legally, create profit, but benefit society and benefit the planet. And that's another key theme that was in Jamie Dimon's newsletter, which is that the companies that focus on the long term are always more successful than the companies that only focus on the short term. So creating a better world is actually saying we have to do good for society and good for the planet. And in fact, going back to when I went to Hangzhou, Rita, I remember walking around Alipay's office and there was a poster of Jack Ma saying, do good for society and good for the planet. It stayed with me ever since, 4 years ago. It stayed in my heart.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think ultimately, long-term value will benefit everyone, and we are living in such a hyper-connected world. I think when I think the purpose-driven society will benefit everyone, and ultimately everyone will enjoy a better life. So I think on you mentioned the what Alibaba and Alipay has been doing in terms of purpose-driven or good finance, let's say. and I think, you know, a very good example of that is Ant Forest. I know, Chris, you talked about this quite often. I think, you know, for the benefit of the people on this call, I think it's a quite interesting project. So as many people know, Alipay is the largest online payment platform in the world. It has about 1.3 billion people, 1.3 billion users globally, and it's super app, right? You basically can pay, manage your finance, you know, like pay for your bills, all kinds of things all in one app. So it's a very interactive app. And what Amforce does is basically it's an extra feature in the app where it gamifies the way that, you know, people can contribute to green initiatives. So basically the Antforce gives the user like green energy point in the app to reward your environmental friendly behaviors, such as, you know, like take public transportation, sharing bikes, and then you grow a virtual tree in the Ant Forest feature. And then when the tree grows, your virtual tree grows to certain size, Alipay plants a real tree for you. So it has, I think last time I checked, you know, there are 500 million people using Ant Forest. And because of the project, 100 million trees have been planted in the desert area of China. And so that project is very interesting, combines, you know, that daily gamification of, you know, of your daily super app, and, you know, and people's sort of desire to participate in making the world better. And it's very easy to use, right? It's just a, you know, a click of a finger. So it was very successful, and it was awarded by the UN I think it's the Earth Champion of the Earth. It's the highest environmental honor for organizations. So I think, in an example like that, right, is a quite interesting one. I think, you know, for any organization that has customers can sort of, you know, think about ways to get their customers involved in contributing to a better world.
Yeah, and what's interesting about this is a couple of narratives. One is that Ant Group has now exported that to Indonesia and to other countries. So over time, we might see those sorts of initiatives coming over here. Having said that, we had a Nordic Future Innovation meeting with the focus on sustainability, and Arlandsbanken, for example, from Finland, has also got a green gauge around money, which shows you how environmentally friendly or not you are based on your spending habits. And another is that, and it may surprise some people, but, you know, Jack Ma, for example, he bought a huge amount of land in America that was a parkland, and he's dedicated that land, after making the investment, to always forever be parkland. So there is quite a strong green initiative coming out of China, which I think a lot of people maybe are not aware of.
Chris, we have a question here, a comment from Joanna. She says that what JD is writing about purpose, stakeholder capitalism, long-termism is nothing new. It has been discussed for quite some years now. The question is why so few companies are still so embedded in their endemic business as usual, and how can it be changed? It's Joanna and Atolini. Thank you, Joanna.
Yeah, I'll kick off on that one, and then Rita, if you have any comment, feel free. But back in the 1990s, I engaged with a gentleman who was a central banker from Belgium, who actually was instrumental in creating the euro, and his name was Bernard Lietaer. Unfortunately, he passed a few years ago. But he wrote a book about the future of money, which I can recommend to all of you, even now, because it's the model of how to use the financial system for long-term interest versus short-termism. And I think what's changing today when we talk about is the world getting better, is that the Gen Z, the iGen, the millennial generation, the generations that are now becoming the managers, the leaders of our world, are far more aware of the issues of our world than the baby boomers and the people that went before. And in particular, the influence of David Attenborough and Greta Thunberg and other influencers has made us all highly aware, not just of the climate emergency, but there's more than just a climate emergency. There's the issues around inclusion and diversity and equality. And for me, those other factors are just as important as the climate. We need to create a world that actually embraces everyone. In fact, Jamie Dimon's newsletter finished with this quote, which is, "We have an opportunity to make the world a better place for ourselves, our children and grandchildren, and for all living things that share this planet with us." It really resonates so much. And when you hear a respected leading global banker saying that we have to make it a far better planet and be more inclusive and have less inequality, then I think maybe the world has changed, the thinking has changed. Do you agree, Rita?
Yeah, I agree. I do agree. I think, like, I was just going to mention that, I didn't make that statement, like whether I think the world is getting better or not. I definitely agree that, the world is getting better. I think, like many things that are happening that challenge the status quo is a sign that things are changing, right? It's, again, I think it's driven by the new generations in millennials and Gen Z. I think we're probably going to talk about impact investing or ESG investing on this call. But I think, I mean, generally you see that, when it comes to environment, the younger generation millennials, they're already, they already have much more, environmental friendly behavior, right? They eat less meat. They definitely try to consume less plastic, and they buy organic products. So I think the younger generation is leading the way on changing the world. And I think, like the rise of cryptocurrency industry is also another sign of that. In the crypto industry, the word paradigm shift is used a lot. And, like for paradigm shift to happen, it takes time, right? And I think, but it's definitely happening. And I think, this challenging status quo by cryptocurrency or by, like new way of investing by younger generation is definitely a sign that the world is getting better. It's definitely on that direction.
We have another comment.
Sorry, but my favorite phrase at the moment is in November 2020, Donald Trump was unprecedented. Anyway.
We have a comment from the audience. Pavix, go ahead.
Oh, so my comment, I think these problems will be solved by the generation change, as Chris mentioned, because the younger generation is more mindful. They are taking care about the environment, and they care about the food, what they take regarding the healthy food intake, vitamins, and other things. And I think they will be more mindful when they choose a product. And this will force the economy and the companies to move with the change.
Yeah, and I think more than this, what's interesting right now is, when I was born, and I'm showing my age, but there was a lot less people in the world. The population has more than doubled since I was born globally. And obviously it varies by country. And I think it's that pivoting shift around population dynamics, generational dynamics, but also the balance of how do you feed twice the population and potentially another doubling of the population over the next, half a century. And that's the reason why Elon Musk and some others are so interested in multiplanetary exploration. I'm firmly of the belief that by the time my children are grown up, they could go and live on Mars. And it sounds ridiculous. You know, when I was growing up, I was a huge David Bowie fan, and one of his biggest hit songs is there life on Mars? Well, there will be life on Mars in 50 years. It'll be human life. And some of you may say that's completely ridiculous, Chris. But if you think about it, what's happening right now with SpaceX and the Falcon and other space missions is exactly what was happening 100 years ago with the Orville brothers on airplanes. You know, an airplane in 1910 would have been the scariest thing ever to have tried to sit on, because you would be likely to die. And yet all of us quite happily traveled on airplanes until March 2020. And you know, give it another 100 years or 50 years, you're going to see a multiplanetary species. And one of the things I keep saying when we talk about digital, for example, is you need to build a company, whether you're a retailer, manufacturer, or bank, or telecoms, or whatever, that can serve customers and employees who live on Mars. And if you give yourself that challenge, then that's a great way to build a digital business, because effectively in the last year, your customers might as well have been on Mars because they were at home. And so when you're talking digital transformation, think about how would you build a business that had to serve customers and employees on Mars?
Yeah. And I think, you know, like I definitely see a change in, you know, how people, especially younger generation, think about how they want the energy of our world to be used, and also where does our money go, right? So this goes back to, you know, the sort of impact investing, the rise of ESG investing, sustainable investing. You know, it's about, you know, where do we want to put our money? And I think, you know, some research shows that 92% of millennials say they would very likely to put all of their investment holdings in a responsible investing portfolio. And that's definitely different, right? From let's say, you know, like the older traditional way of looking at investment, which is, you know, profit is everything. And I think, you know, so that's another how to say trend that's happening, that, you know, will direct where our money goes to, and eventually that will make, you know, how to say, like the companies that are not environmental friendly or not responsible for the society fail. So I think just the one point to add here.
Yeah, and I know you don't want me to ask this question, Rita, but I'm going to ask it because I'm a troublemaker. But basically, whilst we talk about multiplanetary and globalization, there is actually a rebalancing on Earth between economies and countries. And so I think people may have gathered that you're not European, although you said you've become an honorary Brit, in my opinion. But Jamie Dimon made this quote, which I think is fascinating. Chinese see America as losing ground in technology, infrastructure, and education. They see America as a nation torn and crippled by politics and racial and income inequality, a country unable to coordinate government policies, whether they be fiscal, monetary, industrial, or regulatory, in any coherent way to accomplish any national goals. Unfortunately, there's a lot of truth in that statement. Your view?
I would say I tend to agree with JD. Well, I think, you know, well, he pointed out the problems on the US side, right? Which, you know,
very much so.
The few lines he had here is obviously it's true, right? Like, you know, what we've been seeing, it has been troubling US in the past years. But, you know, he didn't point out the problems on China side, right? So there are problems. I think, you know, like I'm quite neutral on this. I think there are good and bad and pros and cons to any system. But you know, like in terms of, you know, like driving technology, or driving technological innovation or even revolution at certain time of history, I guess, It's legacy infrastructure holds you back. That's why I can say, and that's probably goes back to JD's point that like in terms of the technological innovation, the challenge I think US is facing, right?
Yeah, and I think it's intriguing that I write a lot of positive words about what's happening in China, because from a technological perspective, I truly believe China is developing the next generation of our world, whether it be from artificial intelligence through to distributed ledger technology to space initiatives. China is way ahead. I recognize there are issues. I'm not going to deny that, that there are human rights issues, but equally there are human rights issues in America or in Europe. Black Lives Matter. So you can't just take it on its own in a singular fashion. But if we looked at the longer term, is the world getting better? The Belt and Road Initiative that President Xi is managing from China is fascinating. When I've been around the African nations, it just amazes me how many countries have some form of Chinese investment and support and industry and connection. And now that's happening across most of Asia, Middle East, through to Europe. What do you think the long-term view would be around how all of this pans out?
Yeah, I think first of all, the Belt and Road Initiative is very insightful. As you said, along that line, there are already lots of investment from China, and there's certain cultural ties there, right, historically as well. But I think it's all about. I think it's about I always think Chinese philosophy is not about. It's not about taking things from others. It's more like it's more a trade-based philosophy. We do business with each other, we make money, and everybody happy, right? So it's not about. I think it's not about that sort of a domination. I think that's my view. I would say the Chinese philosophy has always been quite neutral, actually. So if you read Confucius, like the backbone of Chinese philosophy is very neutral. So I think that's definitely that's my view on that one.
Yeah, I like what you said, because culturally, the Asian culture, and I'm not going to say China because I think it's true of Japan and quite a few other countries, is much more consensus based, inclusion based, some would say committee based, than the Western culture, which is very much more individual based and celebrity based potentially. But maybe moving beyond this, if we're looking out from a commercial perspective over the next few years, I wanted to include a reference to mode because I'm biased. I'm involved in the business, so of course I'm biased. We can see this dynamic friction between borders, countries, trade, and currency. If I was a retailer or an airline or a travel company, which hopefully will bounce back, or a manufacturer, I mean, what should I be doing over the next few years in terms of treasury, in terms of operations, in terms of my focal point on where I touch the customer?
Yeah, interesting question. Thank you, Chris. I think first of all, mode, as because you know the founder very well. It's quite inspired by the successful examples of super apps in Asia, right, such as Alipay or WeChat Pay. But I think like super app is sort of misunderstood in many cases. It's actually, super app is not about putting everything into one app. And it becomes very messy and busy. It's about creating that direct and tight relationship with your clients or partners on one platform. So the ecosystem, as we say it, as we call it. So I think What we see is lacking, for example, in UK market, for example, is we don't see a very good successful example of a digital wallet that actually solves omni-channel experience challenge, right? Like, now again, commerce is hyper connected, online and offline. The line is the line is blurring, and like how merchants, how a retailer can connect with engage with their customers. It should be able to happen everywhere, and it should give them a way to interact with users very seamlessly. So what Mode is building is a digital wallet, and potentially omni-channel enabled, so works for both e-commerce and brick and mortar environment, and it's based on sort of, we're touching like sweet spots on both fiat world and crypto world. So we're building the payment solution based on open banking. Again, this is founded on sort of my belief on disintermediation. I think open banking gives players the opportunity to enable users to pay directly from their bank account to the merchant's bank account. Well, this goes back to the energy use, right? Like how we think about our energy should be used. So, for example, if I can pay my coffee shop, directly from my bank account, move my money from my bank account to the merchant's bank account, why do I need a card, right? I'm actually curious to know how much energy and how much plastic the payment card industry uses up every year, right? And if we can cut out the middleman, increase the efficiency, as we said before, it will definitely make people's lives better. And by enabling open banking account-to-account payment, we're bringing a much cheaper alternative to card payment to merchants or retailers in the UK. And on top of that, because it's a connected wallet, merchants can engage with their users through through our wallet directly. So giving their loyalty, their discounts, and the user can get loyalty, to get discount, and use their discount all in one place, right? So that's the idea. And on top of that, we do offer Bitcoin trading and investing functions. So we're sort of building the I would say omni-channel digital wallet for the digital native generation. So that's what Mode is doing, and I do think we're touching on some sweet spots in what's happening in our space.
Yeah, you need to say omni-access, because I hate the word channel, omni-channel. You've got to get rid of it. Omni-access. Just on that point.
Sorry, we have a question whenever you're ready.
Yeah, I was just going to say, and then we'll come to the question proposed, but with the use of cash, during this crisis, we've seen behavioural change where cash usage is diminished immensely for obvious reasons. Is that behaviour going to last long term, do you think, Rita? Are we going to get rid of cash?
Yeah, I think, cash is a sensitive topic, right? Like, in a way, it's the easiest financial tool people can get their hands on, right? So, it's in a way inclusive, right? Because it has been around for so long. And if you talk about digital payment, again, in the world, there are still so many people that are unbanked, and it's hard to say we should eliminate cash altogether, right? Because in some parts of the world, it probably is still helping people. But I do think as we clearly see, the pandemic has definitely accelerated in many places the trend of cashless. In some parts of the world, like China, cashless has it has been cashless for quite a while, but in some parts of the world, like it's still cash and card dominated. So I think the pandemic has definitely accelerated the trend of cashless, but I don't think it will disappear, altogether in the foreseeable future.
Unless you're in Sweden. Marisol, you were saying there's a question.
Yeah, we have a question from Dortejar. She says, I still think we will see this me individual culture going forward. I would expect us to see a more inclusive culture with cross-border cooperation and cross-industries to meet also maybe climate changes. What do you think? And by the way, besides the cash and the card, we have the checks.
But again, if I kick off and then Rita, you can give a reflection of what I'm saying, because and the reason I'm going to kick off is I'm spending a lot of time thinking about it. And many people say to me when I talk about purpose-driven banking that I'm in cloud cuckoo land. It's like the Hallelujah Bank, and it's all lordy, and it's all very worthy, but it doesn't make money, so no one's going to invest in it, and therefore it's ridiculous. I think that's changing. I mean, I hope it's changing. I can't categorically say it's changing because we are driven very much by our income and our bank balance, whether that be at the corporate level or at the individual level. But end of day, if we are purely driven by our profit and our bank balance, then this planet is screwed. And I don't think people want to be in a world that's on a deadline. I think we want to have a world that's here for our kids and our grandchildren.
Yeah. Well, I think the pandemic has definitely shown us that individual, like country working on their own agenda doesn't work when there's a global pandemic, right? And with actually in the past few years, nationalism taking root, how to say, like on the rise in some parts of the world, and this pandemic basically has, how to say, like slapped us in the face, right? Like the individualism will not work in a hyper connected world we're living in, and that's why I think like I am quite back to your question earlier on, Chris, like about this sort of power struggle between the two biggest economies in the world, and I'm always thinking like why is that? Why can't we just work together? And why can't like the also different countries work together, right? Like I think the Belt and Road Initiative is to that purpose. So I think I totally agree with Dorothy's point that I think we need to have a more inclusive culture, both between countries and between industries.
And by the way, that's why we have at the core of the NFI. No, we, as we said before in the mission, is bring the Nordics together, and that part of the effort and the work on connecting the Nordic countries into finding the common ground and collaboration ways, but also to be part of the global conversation to boost global sustainable innovation. Because all in all, we also truly believe at our core that this is a common effort. No, individuality is not part of the future that we want to build. I think, no, in the biggest sense.
And I think this is also a key point, which is because of the network, we've gone global. So we're not global, we're not local, we're both. And for me, that's really been driven home by meetings like this on Zoom during the pandemic, which is I'm connecting with people in every country around the world. I actually ran a 3-day workshop with a company based in Nigeria. I've had several meetings with people in Colombia and Brazil. I've been dealing with people all around the world non-stop throughout this crisis, because before I would fly and have those meetings. Now I can do it over video, and the network has made us global local. So you can't be exclusive or dismissive of other nationalities and of other nations. We're all connected. You can't ignore, people.
Yeah.
You know, we have one of the members of the NFI told us once, and we use it ever since then. We are going from ecosystem to ecosystem, and we love it.
Yeah.
Exactly. And this is from a lady who's from Mexico, who's living in Spain.
Working with the
Global local.
Nordics. We have another comment from Popovics. He says, for this topic, I recommend the Integral Economy book. It has deep investigation around how different culture economies would emerge to develop further.
Yeah, and again, if you build on these points, I mean, I'm living in Poland, just outside Warsaw, and I won't go into all the details, but the thing that's allowed me to survive living here is that I've had all of my entertainment connected to English language speaking networks and stations. I've had the ability to order everything from Amazon delivered here the next day via Amazon Prime from Germany. There's now actually an Amazon Poland, which is even better news. Most of the people here speak some English, particularly the younger people. And I think what's happening is it's not homogenizing the planet, but the planet's becoming easier to deal with because all of our language is becoming common. Almost every country is educating kids in the use of the English language and Chinese language. My children are bilingual, they speak fluent Polish and English. But we also wanted to teach them Chinese, so they play once a week with their friend Hanmu, who's from China. And you know, our world is no longer segregated; it's integrated. So surely it's getting better.
I can teach your child for free, Chris.
No.
Yeah, I think I totally agree that you sort of have to bring in the talk, sort of mention cryptocurrency here again. You know, why it's so sort of popular, right? Well, I think, you know, in a way stand for the new generation. It's a first, you know, like you know, use Bitcoin as an example. It's a first, you know, native internet born borderless currency, right? And as we were talking about, like, how the world is becoming borderless. And if you think about it, you know, because of, you know, all the traditional system we have in place, like nowadays, when you want to send money from one place to another corner of the world, it still takes days and still takes, you know, like lots of money to do that. It's just not right for the era we're living in. So yeah, I think this probably goes back to the topic of, you know, like, is the world getting better? Definitely.
Yeah, and in fact, just on that point, I had a realization. So tomorrow's blog I've written already, surprise, surprise, but it is about Bitcoin. And for me, what's surprising is I spent so long hearing from bankers that it's a complete scam, a Ponzi scheme, and yet now it's got so much invested that the banks are saying customers are demanding it. So Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan Chase and others, Citibank are starting to provide custody and transaction services around cryptocurrencies, particularly with Bitcoin. And I realized that I've argued for maybe over a decade that there needs to be a global currency for the internet. And maybe Bitcoin is it. And maybe this is what's happening.
Yeah. We'll see a comment or a question.
I was going to say, I see we have another question, and then we'll probably need to come to a close. This is from Alejandro, and a great deal of the growth in the financial world in the upcoming decades will come from developing countries, but the wealth will be transferred to developed nations where the banks are based. How do we have a more balanced growth that can be achieved within this context, and how can the global south be better represented? Do you want to kick off on that one, Rita? I've got a view, but
yeah, please, Chris. Yeah.
So going back to the rebalancing of the world and inclusivity and equality and the fact that we're all connected. You know, a while ago there was the digital divide discussion, And I think we're moving beyond that now. I actually do believe that no matter where you are in the world, you can be connected to the network and therefore find opportunity in the network. I've just produced a whole series of children's books, and my illustrators are based in Bangladesh, Pakistan, India, but they're getting an income from my need. And we're going to reach a point soon where no matter how remote or distant you are, you can work and be productive through the network. And so although you, in your question, Alejandro, are saying that actually the wealth will always be moving towards the richest countries, I don't believe that. I think the wealth will move towards the richest content provider. And that's where the wealth will be. And if I'm producing great content in Bangladesh, Pakistan, India, or the remotest villages of China, I'm going to make good money. And that's what the network does.
Yeah, and I think, we're probably also seeing a shift on this front, that, I think for the time to, next decade, I think, there will be lots of competition of countries fighting for talents, wealth, and we're already seeing that, right? Different more and more companies are offering deals for talents or for money to flow to their countries, right? And this will probably change, and especially in a how to say, work from anywhere culture. That's gonna happen, I think, in our world. I think we'll definitely see a shift on that front as well.
And just to close, I'll give a contrarian view back to you, Rita, for your comment, which is so as computers can now produce art, poetry, and music, are all humans unemployable?
Sorry, once again.
As computers can produce art, poetry, and music, are humans redundant?
No. Well, I am quite how to say, bullish on humans on that front. I think, for machines to have consciousness and cognitive capability, that's going to take a long time to happen, or even it will happen at all. I mean, creating computers or machines that has consciousness has been a dream for humans since day one, right? But it still hasn't happened. I think I am quite bullish on humans on this one.
Yeah, I kind of think we have a role.
Popovic says it's 8 years.
Yeah, we actually have a rock and roll. Marisol, maybe you can finish this and talk about what we're doing next.
Well, yeah, I'm still rolling around in my head with all these final ideas. At the end, I think that today was amazing in the sense that we were talking about the present and how we are shaping the future, the role of young people. And doing that, I also wanted maybe to say that is the role of the next generations also to, of course, build the future, and the role of us and all the older generations to help them to do that successfully, So it's amazing to thank you guys for giving us so many things to think about today. The purpose, to come back to the purpose, but with practical and concrete actions of lines of work with true business, and building a better world together at the end, but doing what we do, in our day-to-day businesses with a global perspective. Thank you, Rita, for all these insights from Asia and from all you talked about the world of payments, and thank you, Chris, for your insights. We, as you know, and we said in NFI that we're a family, that we keep connected. We work really hard to bring interesting and relevant content, to create the connection opportunities, to have enough space and time to think, and then finally to execute and do. We will have meetings and conferences in the future. We are working in our forums. We are working in June. We will have the next session with Chris Skinner. So everyone, keep posted and connected because we will keep rolling, as Chris said. Thank you very much, Chris. Thank you, Rita.
Thank you everyone. Thank you, Marisol.
And we will post the video on the internet for those who want to replay it and get inspired again. Thank you very much.